I had two ladies that I was with when I got school.
The special meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District is now called to order. It is Monday, August 26, 2019. It is 5:30 p.m. Joanne, please call the roll.
Commissioner Ernst?
Here.
Commissioner Engel?
Here.
Commissioner Rollins?
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsang?
Here.
Commissioner Ray?
Here. Commissioners, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, it's time for public requests. Please step to the podium and you may give your name and address. Please silence your phones, and for those of you who weren't here last Monday, we do have a new sound system, so if you need to have a discussion, please step out or you will be recorded. Thank you.
Starcroft, 3260 St. Charles Way. I'm just noticing the slide up here that's getting ready for this afternoon's discussion. And would you include in the discussion an explanation as to why the CRA tax payment increases with any increases in millage? I was under the impression that the tax payment to the CRA is the increment of additional property values within the CRA, not the taxes collected. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
That's all?
That's it.
My name is Harold Chaffee. I live at 6200 Northwest 2nd Avenue in Boca Raton, Florida. I didn't get a chance to come to the meeting last week, but I did watch it on YouTube. It's very interesting when you're watching it versus being here, you know. But it was very well done. The only thing I wanted to say is I got to agree with Rick what he had brought up at the meeting, which is basically that you should really start to consider doing something on the East Coast. You should do the driving range and also the executive course while we're in limbo here. I guess maybe it might depend upon the millage increase. I'm not really sure, but. And the other thing too, talk about millage, you really do need the millage increase. I was thinking about it, and basically if you do the millage increase, in 2 years you'll have $18 million or $17 million, and then it's going to take Gumbo Limbo probably about maybe 4 or 5, maybe, let's see, I think the last they mentioned was like 3 or 4 years before they finalize the project. If you think about the timing and the increase in the millage, everything will work out. You know, that by the time you're finished doing what you need to do in the golf course, the Gumbo Limbo will really come and play. But the only way you're going to get everything done that you want to get done is basically to raise that millage. You know, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chaffee. Who else would like to speak, Tom? No, not tonight. All right, since nobody's jumping up, public requests are now closed. It's time for the approval of the minutes of the board meeting of August 19, 2019. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne.
Thank you.
Okay, tonight's meeting is a special meeting to discuss the proposed 2019-2020 budget. Mr. Timberlake will introduce everything up on the screen, and then Brianne will take us through the CIPs that we want to discuss. Thank you, Murph.
Good evening. Just to sort of bring you up to date where we are, at least where I'm understanding we are, on the budget as of today, we have advertised, all the taxpayers in Palm Beach County should have received a notice of your scheduled public hearing, which I believe is Wednesday the 13th?
The 11th.
The 11th, Wednesday the 11th at 6 p.m. in this building. And they also received that notice with the proposed millage that, the advertised millage rate on that, which on this sheet here is the third column, showing that we would hopefully, with this increase, we would receive roughly about $9 million more in tax revenues than we are receiving currently in just the year that's ending this September. As we talked about at the last meeting that I was attending, we have an assessed value almost at $29 billion, which is, you know, higher than the city because, of course, it's a city in the unincorporated area, but it's one of the highest in Palm Beach County. The question that Earl asked about the CRA, the way the CRA works is, it's this, you know, it's, the tax increment was established in, I think, 1981, and that was established at like 97 million was the increment, and everything since that increase in assessed value goes against the current tax rate. So if the current tax rate goes up, what the city receives or the CRA receives goes up. That's how that works. So you increase the tax rate, they get more money. Decrease the tax rate, they get less money. But that's how that works. So it's that way. Palm Beach County pays that, the city pays it to the CRA, and the Beach and Park District are the three entities that pay it. So that's pretty much how that works. As we discussed earlier, I've got 3 columns up here. The first is the current rate, which is 9.9147. The second column is what you can legally adopt with a majority vote, which means 3 out of the 5 would have to vote for it. And the maximum of that is 1.11. And that would roughly give you $6.6 million. And then if you have a supermajority, which of course would be 4 out of 5, would be the last column, which would give you the 9 million. Any questions on this page before we move on? Yes, Bob?
Maybe I'm just reading this incorrectly. There was a August the 8th, a handout that says proposed budget fiscal year on this millage rate of 1.19, and it showed ad valorem revenue of 33.5, and you're saying we're going to get 34,536. Is that a new calculation, Bert?
That's at 100%. You're going to get 97% of it.
Right underneath. Oh, it says 33. I got it.
You don't get everything.
I
So.
see.
Remember, everybody can get a discount on the taxes if they start paying early. Some do, some don't. So it's sort of
I
guessing.
see it now. I didn't see that.
Okay, hopefully this works. Because okay. Okay. Okay, this is the budget in sort of a summary format, and this basically shows what each rate of millage would give you as far as what I consider the last line available for golf course construction, okay? Because that seems to be the primary aim for next year. The first is that the current rate, using everything that we have received so far and reducing the city CIP, about 4 projects, eliminating 4 projects, we would come down to about $3.8 million roughly, or almost $3.9 million available. And using the current tax rate with no change in the rate. If we go to the majority vote one, we would receive roughly, the way the budget's calculated, $9.9 million roughly on that we'd have available. This is because we have reduced the city CIP, and we have included that $500,000 donation that we're going to receive for the tower at Gumbo Limbo. And the last column basically would give $11 million, and that's at the rate of 1.1956, which is the advertised rate and which the taxpayer received last week in their property taxes. We've gone through, the only change, I think there is some, I believe, from what Rio was telling me, there's perhaps some minor changes to fund some additional positions to patch,
Rodrigo,
Gumbo Limbo, yeah.
we did not get a revised budget, but hopefully we will soon.
Yeah, we can make that change. Any questions on here? Existing debt services set, we know what that's gonna be, that's for the purchase of the property. District administration includes the payments for your employees, the insurance bill, which is almost $600,000 these days. Commission, you have to pay a fee to the tax commissioner and to the appraiser, which cities don't have to pay. So those are the main items under that. And this also includes money for the exhibits at Sugar Sand and that type of thing, so. Yes,
Specifically, which city capital improvement projects have been eliminated?
let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Before you do that, Merv,
Yes.
shouldn't you mention what the rollback rate is in that part of the discussion?
The rollback rate, let's see, it was like 0.88. Oh, 8, I have that with me tonight. think it works out to 0.88. Yes, it was 0.8808. But as you can see, I don't think any of those tax notices that I've seen from any city in Palm Beach County went to the rollback rate, but maybe I'm wrong. Most of them go to the current rate, that seems to be the trend these days. Any more questions on this sheet? This is sort of a real easy way, hopefully, of looking at it. Current rate, you'll have about almost $3.9 million available for golf course construction. This is already funding $500,000 for the architect, for the golf course architect. $9 million with a majority vote, 3 votes, and with the super majority, going to the advertising rate is 11.3. Okay. I mean, you have a lot of projects in the future. I mean, you've seen the Gumbo Limbo design, so I mean, you know, that's, you can't fund that on, eventually, you're not gonna be funding that on, I mean, when, you know, if you decide to go forward with that. And then, yeah, so, on that as well. The last 3 years, we've gone to the current rate. We have gone to rollback rates in the past. And we've had rates over 1, I believe, in the past as well, so it's not that unusual, so. Okay, so the next one is the, is the actual city CIP projects, -4. And we have, from my understanding, I have eliminated 4 projects. And those 4 projects are, the first one being the lighting project at the Hornley Park, which is $225,000. The design of the maintenance facility for Council Hornley Park. The design of the maintenance facility for the Spanish River Beach Park. And then the remaining is for restroom renovations for $185,000. So there were 4 projects eliminated, for almost $900 and some thousand from their original request to you. So you have questions about that maybe Brianna and I can answer for you, so.
Yes. We did that based upon conversations we had previously, but we haven't
Yes.
officially decided whether or not those projects will be included. We just wanted to look, because at the time it seemed that nobody was too positive towards some of those projects. I'm not sure why this microphone doesn't sound like it.
Normally, if you do engineering in the first year, then you're assuming the construction is going to be the second year, so that's how those work. So, you know, engineering is going to be 8%, somewhere in that range probably, growing 8 to 9, something like that, and then the rest of it's going to be the construction. 15%. So.
Did you say Spanish River Park Beach Maintenance Facility? No.
Yes.
That one's taken out right now, based on conversations we had. I think it was the meeting that you weren't at. There was a conversation about certain projects, so that one is not included in this budget right now.
That project is not in.
But that's why we're meeting tonight to discuss it. No.
Spanish River Fields Maintenance Facility is not in there either.
Correct.
The Hornley Park, yeah,
Right.
correct.
But phase 2 design is?
No,
No.
City
And site lighting, so that's 5 things that were removed.
site lighting.
Site lighting,
Well, phase two was taken out of our line item this year, so it wasn't something he had to eliminate.
well, it was on here though, okay.
And you can recommend to the city, one thing you can do is to recommend, let's put this project out a year, so back it out a year. You can make that recommendation as well.
Well, did everybody go to Spanish River Park Maintenance Facility? Everybody have a chance to visit it?
I am scheduled for Friday.
Oh,
I
that's
couldn't
right.
make it this Friday, sorry,
Either
last
way.
Friday.
Steve, did you
I
have,
haven't had an opportunity even to schedule anything yet, but I will.
and Bob?
I'm not planning on scheduling anything.
Okay, I guess you and I are the only ones who've done it, but it does bear some discussion, and I have asked Greg to clarify some things, but I can't, I guess it's a big file and it won't pull up on my phone, so we're gonna have to ask you and put you on the hot seat for that when we get to that. Okay. Do you wanna discuss that now, commissioners?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we can, do you wanna let
Murph, would you like to continue and then we'll
Well,
go back to the
this
others?
is where we are right now, so, I mean, be a good time to talk about it.
Okay,
Are there any other projects that we want to discuss putting back in besides the Spanish River Maintenance Facility?
We're talking about Spanish River Beach Maintenance
Yes,
Facility.
yeah.
as Merv said, you know, you put the design and the engineering in one year and then you plan to build it the next,
Yeah,
right?
that was my objection, is that, not that I don't think it's needed. I like the idea that Merv suggested to defer it for next year, only because I don't think we can really be committed to 1.5 million or 1.6 million at this point until we know completely what we're doing. So I would hate to have a commitment of giving them design money with the expectation that we're gonna give them 1.6 million the following year.
Greg, would you send all the commissioners that file, please, when you get back to your office, if you would, please? Erin?
Yeah, one thing when I went over there, Michael was supposed to send me some kind of follow-up on, having, vehicles exposed, how they are, versus in a facility, and how much increase in lifespan that they would have. And also pictures of the termite damage that was done, so I haven't received that yet. But, apparently the facilities department, could shut that building down, like, anytime. And they really have nowhere else to go, so that, we should just keep that in our heads as we're trying to figure this out. And also, like, some of the hazardous material items are like, they're not kept as well as they probably should be, like in a facility as well, because they have no facility to keep them. So like a lot of these little different things are signs that we really should think about putting some money towards this facility. And not to mention like the ins and outs of like actually getting the equipment in and out like they have to, because they have to put all the vehicles in there and then take them out to get the ones from the back out and then put the other ones back in. It's not easy, from what I saw when I was there. So if you have time to go, it would be, it's not a nice place to be. It's really not. And they have to house like 40 maintenance workers in there. I mean, just the break room alone. And the fact that they have to keep files in the women's bathroom. I mean, the whole women's bathroom is kind of loaded with files. Yeah, it's a building that's in really poor shape. So anyway, that's my
Yeah. How old is this structure, Greg?
30 years.
30 years, and how long have you had termites there?
Termites, it was treated approximately about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's been kind of reoccurring.
Do you have any kind of a concept as to what kind of design we're looking at for the money that we're talking about spending over there? And have y'all value engineered that to make sure you've got the best project for you?
The report that I'll send you, it has 3 conceptual designs in there, and a couple of designs are staggered, whether it's a 1 or 2 story type of facility to save space. A lot of the expense in building maintenance in that area is we have to move the footprint of the building back. Part of the current storage area is in what's the Florida Inland Navigation District easement. So to get all the equipment in, we have to move the building back, and you start digging into having to remove muck, and re-solidify the ground and whatnot in order to build on. So just part of it, because of the nature of the site, is a little more expensive. Also hardening the building because it's on the ocean front for hurricanes and whatnot. Some of the expense going into the building. But the report that we'll send you was 3 conceptual designs with 1 or 2 options for each of those concepts.
And you may not know the answer to this question, Greg, but how was it determined that our share of the construction cost was, what'd you say, Greg? Million?
1.5, almost 1.6 million.
Yeah, it was roughly a little bit less than about a third or less than that, but the beachfront maintenance for the 3 beachfront parks has always been traditionally split 65-35 for the beachfront parks or whatnot. Red Reef Park does not have a maintenance facility, and the maintenance staff and most of the equipment and whatnot for Red Reef are housed at Spanish River. So, again, it was my understanding there was some conversation some time ago that instead of building another building at Red Reef Park, the Spanish River Park maintenance would cover all of the beachfront and whatnot, and that it was proposed at a 65-35 split.
Greg, what's in that newly painted structure in the Red Reef parking lot on the west side?
That basically just some supplies and whatnot for the golf course.
Okay.
the Rotary golf courses.
So this maintenance facility also is the maintenance facility for all the parks that are east of Federal Highway too. So it does Sandpine Park, Red Wing Park, Spanish River Park, South Beach Park, and Lake Wyman.
Yeah, not Sandpine, but the other ones
Right.
closer to.
Okay.
But we're not responsible for the majority of those.
Right, but what I'm saying is all the equipment is housed in this one location, and all the people are housed in this one location, so.
So how's it we're getting 35% of that? I know we're talking about the beach, we split that 65-35, correct?
Right.
But if you've got all these other parks that are, that Aaron just mentioned into the factor, I mean, it seems like we're paying more than our share on this.
Well, it's, when you look at it, it's Silver Palm Park, which is the wildflower property, Silver Palm Park, Lake Wyman, and then everything else is the beachfront parks, including Ocean Strand, which we oversee the contract for Ocean Strand, and there's also still maintenance that's performed there from the staff in the building.
So Hillsborough, Rio is not
No.
included in that?
Now, all the rest of those other parks, it's only, like I said, Lake Wyman, Rutherford, wildflower property and everything on the ocean itself. Everything else is maintained from our municipal complex or the district parks in the west.
What the question, as a city threatened to red tag your building, are you threatened with demolition and closure, or do you know somebody up there that could help you stall that for a year?
Well, some of what we got to look at is it's a question of whether or not we're gonna look at moving forward with doing, repairing the building or look at building another structure soon. From my understanding from conversations with municipal services, is that's part of the question, is looking at, the damage or whatnot, the age of the building and the structure, what we would have to do to repair it versus how long it'll last, and if it's worth expending the money if we're gonna turn around and knock the building down in a year or two to rebuild it.
So who is threatening to close you down? Because Michael made that point the other day.
Yeah, it's basically with municipal services looking at the structure of the building and whatnot, and termites that we've had in the past, it's basically coming through there.
And they are going to build a new municipal services building as well?
We're looking at the municipal services complex, right, they're looking at moving all of recreation services out of the municipal complex. That is the other maintenance building we were talking about, Canister Hornley Park. The area there, they would move all of our folks out of the municipal complex, beautification, parks maintenance, build a larger facility on the site of Canister Hornley Park that would house the Canister Hornley staff and the recreation services staff from the municipal complex. That's why that facility there roughly changed to about an 80% city, 20% or more for the district funding for the maintenance facility at Canister Hornley.
So how many, if we broke it down into acreage for all the parks that are city parks and the parks that are district parks, is that how you come up with the 30%? Or is it the number of staff that it take care of the district parks?
It's historically with the funding for the beachfront parks, again, because there's generally the three largest parks on the beach, but the funding for a lot of the staff, equipment and whatnot has usually been proposed. It was 65-35. I believe now you're doing 50% of the beach redirectment, but the splits for the beachfront parks have been 65-35 for as long as I know the city.
So it's just historical, it's not official?
Right.
Okay. Maybe, Brian, we could look into that?
Has any work been done on establishing a cost for the repairs and how long the repairs would last?
Then again, I can check with our municipal services. Again, there wasn't a whole lot of looking at how long, doing major repairs to the building again, because the building just does not satisfy or meet the needs of what we have out there. Again, it would be glad, to bring it out there and show you, but if you see the building itself and see, it's really not something 40 people can work out of successfully.
Now, I understand, I'm just looking to see if there's a way we can defer the cost for a year and still have a habitable facility. I understand what the issues are. You don't want to sit at a table or sit on a chair and the next thing you know, the termites are having a picnic on the legs. That's not very comfortable. And I'm sure that there are other issues aside from the fact that you've probably outgrown the facility. But I'm just looking to see if we can get the biggest bang for our buck.
Sure. But I'll get that report.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Greg? How many square feet are you looking at for the building,
I'm sorry, for the new building,
for the new building?
it's about 7,000 square feet.
So when I asked a structural engineer this morning at breakfast, what it would cost per square foot, he said $300 a square foot, so that's about half. So where is the other half going?
In the report itself, what's broken down is there, it shows you the cost of the building, whether it's 1 story, 2 story, chemical storage area, the chemical wash area, covered exterior storage, parking, all that's included in the costs.
Would that be in a separate building?
Some of it would be, there's one central building with accompanying attached storage areas to it, yes.
Okay.
Again, if there's maps, pictures, everything else, I apologize, the file didn't download, but I'm
Yeah,
sure you did.
well, it's just my phone. Commissioners, I do encourage you to go and have a tour. Unfortunately, it takes everybody's time, but it is very enlightening, and it might make a difference if you saw what the facility was looking like at this point. Are there any other questions about things that we're taking out of this budget with the city's CIP?
I mean, Madam Chair, I think all the projects are worthwhile, but I don't know, I think we have some big discussion items around the budget in general, about the golf course, and all these things kind of fit together. They're pieces of a puzzle, so we haven't talked about Gumbo Limbo, and we really haven't talked about, you know, is it our goal to build a golf course next year, given the city council's discussion and where they're going? This is small relative to the rest of it. I think it needs to be done. It's a matter of who does it and when.
Well, and also that we're consulted on this, you know,
Yeah, I agree.
when it's time,
Totally agree with you.
because I don't like to get, you know, okay, so the designs have been done, oh, can we have some money? And no offense to you, Greg, I know you haven't,
Yeah.
but
It's uncomfortable because there's a lack of communication and a lack of participation in it. So,
well, how are we gonna solve that?
good question.
Bob, you go ahead.
Do we want to continue planning the budget with these projects removed? Or do you want to add any, for the sake of, as we line these things up on the budget and get to that point, we want to make sure that we have everything defined.
And we only have one more meeting before our first public hearing, which will be on Tuesday of next week. So whatever your pleasure is,
Okay, well, I'll take a stab at it. How about that?
okay, you're our numbers man.
Okay. So I'm gonna first I think it starts with, what do we wanna do? Does this group agree that they would like to proceed with the golf course, and do we need to raise money for that for this cycle? So we've had a lot of discussion over the period. Most of us have attended city council meetings, and the result of that was that the city wanted to look at their own RFI, and they're in the process of doing that, and tomorrow they're going to get feedback and results.
Right.
The other fact of the matter is that the mayor has indicated that they would take on Spanish River Conestoga Park at phase 2. So I heard them say that was roughly 9 or 10 million. It wasn't our budget, but they said they would assume that. I also have heard that they, by virtue of the fact that they're working on the golf course, that they are committed to some form of the golf course on the west side, but they have expressed no interest on the east side. So, what I think we can focus on is the east side. So I'm supportive of the, let's, see where this goes on things. I think we have to give them the opportunity. I think we as a group unanimously agreed that the Price Fazio design was a great design, and that we would love to see it implemented. We would also like to be the ones charged with implementing it, but we don't have the money for it. So the reality is, either we have a financing for it, or we raise taxes for it, or we get a donation from the city to do it. And I like to look at raising taxes as the last possible option, to be honest with you. I'd rather do financing, I'd rather, work with the city and get the results of that. So when we were first pitched the whole golf course project, it was my understanding on the golf course that the hotel site could be remarketed as a hotel, and that would be a cost savings. It could be sold as a hotel. And that part of it, we went out and did a CRB Richard Ellis study, and the study did indicate that it is viable as a hotel. I went through and read it. It did not say that it was not viable at all. There was an open question of what you do with it and how you do with it. The thing that appealed to me about Price Fazio's design as well as Jack Nicklaus's design was the integration of restaurants and other retail parts to the element. And I think any kind of retail element beyond the golf course will be essential for the success of the golf course. So what I would look for in this budget, honestly, is do we have money to build a maintenance facility, which I think is the starting point for doing a lot of this stuff, and can we get money by selling the hotel site and partnering with someone to do that hotel site in not only a hotel but a restaurant and integrate it in with the design that the Price Fazio team has done to be the short course as well as the driving range. I would like to see us market the hotel site for a hotel operator. I think it's roughly 4 acres or so. And officially put it out to someone who's marketing it, not necessarily CB Richard Ellis, a hotel marketing, and see what we get back for it. In the meantime, the city will go through their analysis of what they want to do. And I think we'll all have to come back together as a group to say, where do we want to go? But if we market the hotel site and we were to gain $3 to $5 million for it, I think we would have sufficient money to do the east side of the course, and that is our commitment of it until we get further clarification from the city. The other alternative is to raise taxes, and it's going to take us more than 1 year to do that, but it's kind of going on our own path. And to me, the discussion at the last meeting had a lot of discussion around the city versus the district and a lot of how we're, some tension between the two parties. And I think we can still work better together than separate. And I'd really like us to give the city the opportunity, although I don't really like it, I'd like to give the city the opportunity to go through whatever they need to go through to evaluate the East Course and the capabilities of what they'd like to do.
The east course or the west
I'm
course?
sorry, the West Course.
Okay.
Sorry, the West, clarification. Thank you.
Well, there are safety factors that come into play with the west course, having a driving range on the west course is what they're talking about, and that's a real concern to me.
I totally agree with you, and I would never recommend a driving range on the West Course. I'm suggesting that the design that Price Fazio.
And a lot of these have
Right.
a driving range on the west course.
I couldn't see myself approving anything that is unsafe or moving forward into it. So I think they will come to that same conclusion, they just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Bob?
Well, we're somewhat in a conundrum because we just don't have time to wait for the city's response in time before we decide what we want to keep in and take out of our budget. That's the problem. I looked through some of the RFIs, and I mean, if they're doing their due diligence like we did, it's going to take months for them to evaluate these proposals. And I think we're probably 6 months to a year away from maybe even getting an approval, if we do get an approval from the city. But it's an unknown, we just don't know. I hate taking on an obligation of $1.5 million for the Spanish River Maintenance Facility, not knowing where our future is, not knowing what millage rate we should put into place to take care of those things that we would like to have done. Had there been no golf course, would we have done the design for Spanish River Maintenance Facility, Nornley, or Spanish River Beach Maintenance Facility? Maybe, I just don't know. We've finished up most of our major projects. Now that Swim and Racket is complete and Patch Reef is just about done. on time and under budget, I might add.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. But no, I do think that we need to plan on building the golf course. I just don't know about the hotel site. It's just what I consider not to be a very great location for a hotel. When you consider on Yamato, you go west of 95 and it's Hotel City, and they're building a new one at the corner of Yamato and Congress.
I think it's apartments.
If it's apartments, they're very tiny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I've heard conflicting stories on that, Craig, whichever it is, but I know that that's kind of the epicenter of where hotels are out there on Yamato, west of 95. There's a few on Federal Highway, but they're kind of, mom and pop type places as opposed to Hampton Inns and Marriotts and so forth. So I don't know. I'm reluctant to put any of these 4 items that we have back into the budget because I just don't know where we're going. I do know that we're probably capable of borrowing money against our non-ad valorem dollars, but how much is the question. And what is the right millage rate, whether the 1.1956 is the right number, or whether the 1.111 is the right number. I've looked at my taxes in both ways, and there is an increase, and I'm happy to step up and pay my share, whichever one we decide to do. So
Yeah, mine went up would go up for $4 with the maximum increase. $4 a month, $4 a month,
for $4 a month.
a month,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think that's more, that's not even a cup of coffee at Starbucks, so.
It depends on what you want.
Good point, Steve.
Steve?
Yeah, if I had my druthers, in a perfect world, I would love nothing more than to build this golf course along with the city. I unfortunately do not think that is to be. But aside from the golf course, and Mr. Chaffee brought up a very important point, we have other things on the table that need taken care of. And one of those things is gumbo limbo. We can't do that at our current millage rate. Golf course or not, we can't do it. So we need to take that into consideration. The condition of the maintenance facility at Spanish River, I think that needs to be addressed. How much we should be putting in is another thing that needs to be addressed. If, based on what I'm seeing here, if our share of the pie, quote unquote, is 35%, then we're looking in the neighborhood of 800,000 rather than $1.5 million. So,
They're saying it's 4.7 million.
well, I said 7,000 square feet. Greg, am I correct?
It was just part of the actual building itself, that's not the entire site.
Okay.
The whole complex.
I think we can negotiate with the city and be responsible for a lesser part of the pie. What I don't want to see is things falling apart and having a bigger problem, having to address that down the road than what we have now. As far as the hotel site, I agree with Bob. There's just too much hotel activity on the other side of 95 for this to be a viable site. Also taking into account the ease of getting in and out of the site, which is not great. So that needs to be addressed as well.
What about a restaurant?
A restaurant could work, but it would have to be very well managed, and there would have to be a reason besides golf for people to come to. This has to be a destination, okay? My experience with restaurants is individuals, even with money, usually don't know how to operate a restaurant, and chains usually have their own agenda, and that may or may not coincide with ours. So a great example was a steakhouse here. Great concept, but it just didn't work. And considering location and everything else, on paper, it should have worked.
I have a question for Jacob. Since we are a public entity, are we allowed to have service with alcohol at any of our facilities? Is there any restriction that way with something that we own?
The answer in short is no, but it would depend, because we'd have to have a liquor license, which we could apply for. In other words, if we ran a municipal golf course or a public golf course that was ours, we theoretically could have our own liquor license and have a catering license, and we could serve alcohol there, but the circumstances would need to be correct. If we were to contract with a restaurant or another vendor, they could also have a license and operate on our facilities. There are a couple different ways to structure that depending on the nature of the relationship.
Thank you. Sorry, but while I was thinking of it.
No problem,
I'm
you'll get my bill. The other thing that I want to stay away from is building a municipal two. Having the same kind of golf course, quote-unquote, golf for the people, which is how it's been addressed to me, as a family golf course with affordable rates, which we already have. We have two of them, as a matter of fact. We have the municipal course and we have the executive course at Red Reef. And at Red Reef, on a weekend recently, I could have shot a cannon across the entire course and not hit a living soul. And they're both losing money. So I don't want to throw good money after bad and just build a golf course that is not going to be viable in 5 years. So it stands to reason for me, we need to build a golf course that people are going to want to play on, not one that, this is just like municipal, let's go play at Osprey.
It's true. It's true. And one of the RFIs that they got has just recently redone Del Rey. I played that, and it's very similar to playing Winter Park, which it was an okay course, but it's not one that I would drive back to. Even going up to Orlando, I wouldn't drive over to Winter Park and play it again. So I'm not real excited about having, like you say, just golf for the people. Erin, do you want to?
Well, but isn't that what we're supposed to be building? Is golf for our residents?
We already have it. I mean, I'm talking about a low-price facility that families can play at.
Right,
Okay?
I mean, we're gonna build a great course, but it is for our residents.
Yes, it is.
That's who it's for.
Yeah, but what we already have are not great examples of what will work.
Right, but we're not gonna have the municipal course.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I don't want a municipal two. I want to have a course that people will want to come to, not only residents, but out-of-towners. Somebody staying overnight at one of the hotels on Yamato, okay? Wants to get in 18 holes or even 9 holes before he has his morning meetings. That's one of the people I want. I want an opportunity for a whole family to go and have a learning facility so the kids can learn how to play golf. And not only the parents, so that, there's a second generation of golfers that we create. I agree with you. This needs to be a course for city residents, okay? But what we have to worry about, what we have to stay away from, is repeating the same mistakes we made with Boca Municipal and Red Reef.
And the Price Fazio design has interesting and safe aspects to it that make it a more fun course with their contours and not having the bunkers, so that they're impossible to get out of if you get into one. It's going to be a fun course for all levels to play. It's not just for somebody like Nick Price, who, is an amazing golfer, but it's also going to be fun for, somebody like me who, takes 8 shots to get to the green. So it is for the people, but it's also for people who are visiting our community and bringing in tax dollars to the city. Well, you seem to.
I was just gonna say, you know, we have a compare and contrast with Osprey and Boca Municipal. Boca Municipal's rates are lower than Osprey, but Osprey is a difficult course to get a tee time to. Would you agree, Rick?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I think that, you know, take a lesson from that. We do need to have a course that, you know, is going to be fun to play. It's going to have some excitement to it. And I think Price Fazio's plan meets those criteria. And we haven't talked about the fees. I don't want to get anybody excited about the fee structure yet, because we really haven't put together a cost. I've seen some numbers in the National Golf Foundation that talks about $40 to $45, you know, around for 18 holes. But we really haven't discussed what we're going to charge. But I know that we need to have something a little more special than Boca Municipal, which, by the way, had the money been there, I think that could have been a special course too, because it's in a great location and doesn't have the surrounding housing to deal with that we do in Boca National.
Go ahead, Craig.
So just to structure it, I think we conceptually all agree that the design is the right design, but we're not in control of what the city is gonna do at this point, so we don't know what we don't know. They need to come back with their own recommendations of what they're doing. Clearly, they are focused on the east side.
West side.
Or west side, I always get my east and west, sorry, mixed up. They're focused on the west side. So are we saying as a group that we want to proceed with a higher tax rate for the purpose of building the whole course? Or are we saying we want to proceed so that we have money for building just the east side? What is your pleasure?
Well, if we just do the east side, we run into some problems that I brought up before with the irrigation. We will have to have some additional pumping over on that side if the city doesn't start building right away or whatever. You know, we need to have a way to irrigate that land. We can't be out there sprinkling. It's up to you whether you want to start on the east side and proceed that way. We still are going to need the funds to do that. We might be able to do the tunnel if we raise the taxes, maybe not. Or if I haven't heard whether anybody else is opposed to looking into the outside funding as we are having Mr. Ford check into. He's been in contact with Mr. Kosky and Raymond James. So we do need to get into that. Aaron?
I think I agree with what Craig said. I mean,
Come on.
right? I think focusing, because our property is the east side, but I think it's still on the table to work with the city on the whole project. And if they focus on the west side, we focus on the east side, but get the whole project done at once, possibly if we can do that, or the driving range and the 18 holes. And then we would only need the one pump station. So I think it's still there, like we shouldn't rule it out completely yet.
What about maintenance? Maintenance center?
Yeah, it would be where, on our side, where it was
Well,
designed.
they want it on the west side.
Well, just because they went out with this RFI, that doesn't mean that's exactly what they're gonna have. You know, if they decide to go just with the 18 holes and a clubhouse, then we could put the rest on our east side. I mean, it's still all, you know, these were just RFIs, these weren't plans that were done like what Price Fazio did. So it's not like we can't still work with them on the project. I just think we shouldn't rule it out yet, because they are meeting tomorrow, and hopefully they'll have some sort of consensus on what they wanna do.
Well, I think, you know, waiting on a consensus is gonna take some time. I don't think we're gonna know anything tomorrow or anytime in the next month. I think I'm gonna have to stick by my motion when I suggested the 1.19 millage rate in order to get the golf course done. Starting just the east side without knowing what the city's gonna do on the west side, I think has some risk to it. And we don't know, and we won't know for a while what their plans are on the west side. If they stick with the Price-Fazio plan, which I hope they will, but, stranger things have happened. It could be that they like somebody else and then will not give us the approval of our master plan. And then are we at a point where we challenge that in court? Or do we try to partner with them? There's a lot of unknowns at this point. As Craig said, we don't know what we don't know at this point. But I do know that we want to get the golf course built. I do know that increasing our millage rate will help us accomplish that. Whether or not the 1.19 is the right number or the 1.11 with financing is the number, that's the question. And I think financing is available. But then again, when you start looking at what we're doing with the golf course, and looking at the other things that the city would like for us to participate in, not the least of which is, Steve said, is Gumbo Limbo. I think that's a project that I really would like to see move forward, and we're stalled right now, and we will be unless we do something with our millage rate.
Steve?
I have to agree with Bob. We're in a quandary. We don't know what the city's intentions are. The city, I don't think, knows what their intentions are as of yet in terms of specifically what do they want to do with the golf course. What do they want to approve? The Price-Fazio plan? Do they want to take one of the other proposals that they got off of the RFI and go further with those? There are a lot of unknowns. We have to figure out a way to prepare for the worst of the worst. And I don't like to use that term, but we have to figure out a way to prepare for the possibility that we're going to be totally on our own. And we also have to prepare for doing work on Gumbo Limbo. There's just so much here and so little time to figure out what we're going to need to do. I would love to hear what Ford has come up with in terms of financing proposals, if anything at all, because I agree with Bob and with Craig, especially with Craig. I'd rather do almost anything than raise taxes, but we're kind of sitting in a situation where, forgetting about the golf course, we have other things that need to be taken care of that literally force us into the position where we have to have some kind of millage increase. So there we are. And so do we have any response from the people at Ford as far as ideas for financing?
Mr. Kosky is available by phone. Do you want to try?
We can certainly try to call him. I don't know if he's gonna be back in the town. He'll be at the September 3rd meeting. Do we want to go through the city's budget and talk about anything that we don't want to include? Because that's a big chunk of our numbers. And we have a concrete ask as far as what they want. So if we could agree or not agree on CIP projects, we could budget for those. And then we're left with that last dollar item where we have to talk about golf course, Gumbo Limbo, a second field house at the Sugar Sand, Patch Reef.
I guess, well, I'm kind of beyond that conversation. I was back to Bob's point that, look, those are off the table until we understand the first one. So I support the removal of those items until we fully understand them. I mean, I don't disagree, we need a Spanish River facility, but I'm not quite clear. When I did the math, it's over $4.5 million. So if you put that in your budget right now, you just, in my mind, once you commit to it, you're committed to the whole thing. And cost overruns or underruns. So, and Steve, I want to go back to you on the golf course. If you're worried about the worst case scenario, let me explain the worst case scenario. It is you now own Boca Muni over at Boca Chica. no one's there, and it's very expensive to operate, and you're paying the bill.
And
So,
that's what I want to avoid.
so that if that's what you want to avoid, I strongly recommend that we partner with the city, because the unfortunate part of partnering with the city is, what are you going to do? You have to agree upon what you're going to get. And we haven't gotten there yet, but by sharing costs, and that's where you split the loss or split the profit.
And what I said at the outset was,
Yeah.
if I had my druthers, I do this in partnership with the city. My concern is, based on what I'm hearing and seeing, that the city is not interested in the same concept of a golf course that we are. So that kind of makes partnering very difficult. If we could work it out so that we can partner and they do their part and we do our part and we all work together and ride off happily into the sunset, I'm all for it.
Yep.
Okay? It's not that I'm disagreeing with you.
I agree with you. I think we're all on the same page. We believe the Price Fazio team is the best design of a course for functional profitability, running conceptually. Well, let me play that out, okay? Let's say they go through the RFI process and they say, guess what? I've got 2 guys and a tractor and they can do it for $2 million. We want to do that. Then what happens?
That's,
Jacob, can you answer that question for us if they decide that they want to just take over the west side?
A couple observations if I could. And we know we have an interlocal agreement that governs our relationship with the city. And we also know that as long as we are paying our obligations to satisfy the debt under that interlocal agreement, then the city theoretically has an obligation to continue accepting those funds, and once we've paid in full, we're entitled to that property. I mean, the agreement essentially says, once we've satisfied that obligation and paid off the bond, they're obligated to convey the property to us. They're also obligated to approve our design, but their approval shall not be unreasonably withheld. And it remains yet to be seen what unreasonably withheld means. That's part of the discussion I think that we're still having. I can tell you this, in the context of any intergovernmental dispute, Florida law provides a process which governs the relationship between public agencies, local governments. And before we ended up in the courthouse with the city, we would end up in what's called a Chapter 164 process, which can be initiated by either governmental entity. It's initiated by the adoption of a resolution, and it lays out the process by which one party believes they've been aggrieved by the other. That resolution triggers a few steps under the statute. It requires a face-to-face meeting between the city manager and the executive director in an effort to resolve those differences in good faith. If our executive director and the city manager were not able to do that, it requires a joint meeting between council and commission, specifically within the parameters of the statute, to try to resolve the issue as 2 collegial bodies. And if that can't happen, it then requires a mediation. There are a number of different steps that would ultimately occur before we were sitting in a courtroom opposite the city on any issue relating to this discussion. But at the end of the day, this process is governed by an interlocal agreement. And I know we may have some disagreement with the city as to the interpretations of that agreement, but I think through the conversations and continued efforts, there's hopefully some room for resolution. And if there's not, there's a process under the statute which will help us achieve hopefully some common ground.
It seems to me we've gotten back to a discussion about the millage rate and our plans. We have one more budget meeting before we have public hearings, is that right?
September 3rd.
Okay. It seems to me that what we should do is, in the meantime, investigate what private financing might be available to us, and then let us see how that would fit in with our budget at either one of these millage rates. And for the purpose of this meeting tonight, I think we should take a vote with Craig and eliminate those 4 items that we have already.
Can I make a suggestion? One thing you could do too, what if you could make a motion tonight to eliminate all 4 projects? And at the second budget meeting, I know that you can do this, you could add one of those projects back in again. Just because you remove them tonight doesn't mean that you can't put them back in again at a later date, at your second hearing.
Do we need a motion to do that?
I would suggest
You would
yes.
need a motion at that second hearing to do that, but you can amend your budget. I mean, the budget, you haven't adopted it yet, you can change it at that time to put that project back in if you want to. That's one way of doing it. You could, when we prepare the budget, we could take all 4 of them out. Then you could put remember what the city does, you probably remember this, what the city does with nonprofits? The city goes through this whole routine with nonprofits, then they put it back in at the budget hearing, the public hearing, basically. So, I mean, you can do that, it's easy to put projects back in before you adopt the budget, and when you finally adopt, at your second hearing, you adopt the final budget.
So we can do it at either the first or the second public
I
hearing?
mean, I think the second is probably the appropriate time, because that's when you're actually incorporating
Okay,
the funds for next year, and you can put that back in. I believe that's correct.
so do I hear a motion to remove those four at this time?
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we delete the Countess to Arlington Spanish River Park Lighting Project at $2.25, $225,000, the Spanish River Park Maintenance Facility at $170,000, the Spanish River Beach Maintenance Facility at $231,000, and the restroom renovations at $185,000.
Do I hear a second?
I'm confused, you said 231,000 for Spanish River Beach Maintenance Facility?
That's
No.
the design,
Design,
I have 150,000.
no, it's,
231.
It's already removed in this part of the budget.
Yeah, it's not in your,
It's
that,
not in there.
It's right here.
That's
that's this current year.
current year.
That's the, it's,
Yeah, it's
So it's already
2019.
Okay, can I amend it though to keep Spanish River Beach until the rest of the commissioners have seen it? The other ones we
We
can.
can always add it back in at the second public hearing.
Okay.
And you're going to be our conscience and remember that. Because we'll all make notes, but if we can add it back in if everyone agrees. But I need a second.
Second.
Craig, seconded, Bob. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, like sign.
Madam Chair, if I may stop for one other comment.
Yes,
I know
please.
we talked a little bit about funding opportunities and the district's relationship with Jerry Ford and Associates. Our office did get a call from Mr. Ford last week, and among the number of different funding opportunities that they are looking at are several that involve some different lending institutions that would require them to have expressed authority granted by this board to operate as the district's agent in pursuing some of those funds. They've provided us with an amended engagement agreement that we intend to bring back on the 4th for this board, the 3rd for this board to consider. Given this discussion and this item coming back on the 3rd in a different format, and we'd be happy to try to have them available by phone to provide you with an update on some of their efforts thus far, which may help facilitate this discussion.
Do you already have the agreement? Or-
We do, we're reviewing the revised document with them. We've, I believe, provided the draft to Brianne for her consideration as well. It's going to be on the next agenda for the board to consider, and we'll have Mr. Ford available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bob?
Jake, have they done any investigation into what financing is possible at all? Have they talked to any institutions about?
I believe, I don't want to speak for them. I believe that they have, so I'd rather them provide you with the additional details.
They will have some kind of an idea.
They should, yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yes, we did.
That's fine.
That was unanimous. Yes. Thank you, Joanne.
and the last thing I have in my presentation, these are the district projects. If there were any questions on those, maybe you discussed it at your last meeting. There were $1,635,000 total. That would include those in the budget we prepare to have advertised.
Do you want to go through them for us?
I've asked Brianne or Melissa to
Yeah, I mean, Melissa will be better to speak on them, but hatchery batting cages is something that was approved to roll out next year. There's some resurfacing at hatchery, and you wanna talk about that one?
Resurfacing of asphalt at Patchogue Park is there's a loop from the tennis center up to the front of the entry at the Patchogue Park that has a lot of trip hazards on it, that I think needs to be re-asphalted to alleviate trip hazards on that. It's an area that is walked quite frequently, sometimes with people in strollers, et cetera. So that's for root intrusion along that pathway. The Swim and Racket Center pool and court resurfacing is exactly that. There are some areas of the pool needs to be resurfaced. I don't remember off the top of my head, it's in your book, the last time it was redone. but it's starting to get to the point where, we gotta make sure that we get that resurfaced so that we don't continue to have, buildup in that cannot be cleaned long-term. The geothermal center is, that's the heating element in the pool, and the temperature. And we've had issues with that breaking down in the past, and once that breaks down, I know we don't get very cold winters, but you'd be shocked at how quickly that pool does cool down, where it becomes unusable. So we need to keep that, because that's something that shuts the pool down when it's done, and I can't remember, Greg, you might remember how old it is, I don't remember off the top of my head how old it is, but the Sugar Sand Park bleachers, long-term slowly, we need to address some things at Sugar Sand Park. There's 3 different areas that, at the top of our head, that the city has recommended. I agree with them that through the next, say, anywhere within the next 6 years, we need to gradually work these things in. That will be at one point the resurfacing of the field house surface itself. Each year you have to go in and sand that down, and that makes the top of it get thinner and thinner, which makes those boards weaker and weaker, so then you have to go in and replace them. But there's a lot of things that we can probably get through another 5 years. The challenge is, we need to replace the wooden bleachers in there to get a plastic model that is more up to date and lighter weight, so the wear and tear on that floor is not as bad. And also eventually, probably in another 2 years, 2 to 3 years, replace the generator prior to the floor, because all those things can impact the floor worse if they're not replaced. Because if the generator goes and we lose power, then the condensation on the board can cause damages to the floor. If the bleachers are not replaced and the thinning of the boards are happening because you're resurfacing it, then that can cause problems with the weight going over the boards, and you can have boards break. And I actually experienced that at FAU one time. So that, the recommendation is to start by replacing those field house bleachers in there and getting a lighter weight bleachers, which will take some of the stress off the floor when they roll those bleachers over them. The asphalt walkway, the next asphalt walkway, the recommendation is to redo the walkway from the field house to the top lot at Sugar Sand Park. Once again, that's with root intrusion that has happened there. And the second part of that same one, which would be covered, would be from the quad fields back to the second fields. If you've ever walked that, there's a heavy amount of root intrusion, and that's probably our worst one overall in all of our parks from a root intrusion standpoint. And I think that's all of those.
The remaining ones were just golf course design, the $120,000 for project management of the golf course, and then $300,000 for beach renourishment, which we've done.
So,
Craig, you have a question?
yeah, can you explain the 500,000 golf design that we already spent $1 million?
Yeah, that was based, just to have that number out there, that was just kind of based on what we've been spending, and moving forward, we still have to see buildings designed and construction drawings complete, so where that will go, we just wanted to have some money set aside for the rest of the design.
Seems like a lot. I mean, I thought we already did this design part of it. I mean, I personally would like to see more money done, put to this facility as we grow into it. There's, if you compare this pool area to Meadows, there's no music. I mean, that's probably nothing to do. But there are other things that we learn as we grow into this building we kind of need to do. I think you could incur easily, another 50 to 100,000 doing that. The other part of it is, we really haven't talked much about the recreation programming part of it. And that's really, may not be a capital cost, but it's a cost. And how we build that in, Michael was at the last meeting, and, I'm trying to get the recreator to a more program style digital on your phone program. So to me, that's a priority.
We can lower that number, I mean, I think it was just based on, Merv, you can chime in, but I think we just based it on what we've been spending, just to have that set aside. For the golf course design, Carl, the 500,000.
Look and see what we spent this year.
But I guess, can we ask Wayne, what does he expect to spend next year? That's what we really need to know.
When you say golf course design, you mean the actual golf course design, or you mean, all the consultant's fees go
All of that. Yes.
all the fees? Probably in the last report update that I gave you, there's in the invoice summary of invoices that we've done, there's also a breakdown of consultants' costs, what the total costs are, what's being paid to date, and what is remaining to be paid.
Right, but we also have been adding consultants.
Oh, what's
So
right?
We've been adding consultants too, so we don't really know, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's not
500,000.
500,000.
It's not gonna be 500,000 next year?
No, you're adding consultants, but it's not gonna be $500,000 worth of.
Right, so
additional.
so next year, what would be a good number for us to set aside to pay you and your?
I can have a look now, but it's in that document.
For next year?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can have a look. It'll take me a while. I don't have the number off the top of my head.
okay.
So for the next meeting, maybe you'll come back with a number, and from that number, I'd like us to consider moving whatever that differential is into Melissa's projects around here, you know, whether it's Patch Reef or Swim and Racket or Sugar Sand. There always seems to be things coming up.
Yes, there's a couple of things too, that, and Brianne knows that we're waiting to hear back on these. We have a request in front of us now to replace the air conditioning unit at Patch Reef Park Community Center, air conditioning unit number 1. I was hoping to be able to bring that before you tonight, but I'm trying to get some more background on it because I don't want to stand before you and not be able to tell you when was the date of install, et cetera.
Those will likely be this fiscal year though, correct?
I'm sorry?
It's likely gonna happen this fiscal year, like the 51,000 will come out of this year's.
No.
It's gonna happen after October 1st?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
That's approximately 51 to 52,000. And then as I got a text on Saturday, the field house has a leak, the roof. And so we did get some roofers up there to patch it, but I am in correspondence with them to find out the condition of the entire field house roof, to check on that.
So just a thought, since Wayne's working on that now, but between now and the next meeting, maybe we'll come up with a number. If we assume it's like half of that, the other half should go towards facility projects in the greater district area. And maybe we can go back and fund something for Grace.
Noting what you'd said, Brianne, it probably would be encumbered but not spent.
Right, okay.
As far as it's, has to be spent.
Let me just ask Melissa a quick question before I forget it. The bleachers that are in there, they will not be replaced this season.
I would have to work on the timing of that. I don't know the timing yet.
A question, this is a safety issue. For us old codgers going up and down the stairs without a railing in the center is a little dangerous from fall standpoint. And I know there've been some complaints about that. So if you would check and see if there is the ability to put a railing in there, or I know there was one at one time, maybe it just fell into disrepair.
I'll look, because when I was over the day, there was a railing up, and the bleachers were out, and there was a railing. Now, what they are is it's not one solid railing all the way up. It's like every other step has a set. So the question will be, are they not putting some of them up? And we'll have, I can take a look at that, and I think Greg can probably help me take a look at that too, to make sure we're putting all the support railings in place.
Right.
Because it's like every other step, it comes up and it takes a little loop, and that's your hook. So it would be nice if it was one solid went all the way up, but most of them are not built that way. Even the newest ones we put in when I was at FAU were not built that way.
Just give it your best effort.
Absolutely, but we'll confirm that what we do have is up.
Thank you. Sorry.
Mark, did you have something else?
I have, no, I can't. We do have a recent report of how much we spent, but I don't have it with me right now. How much we spent this year.
We'll
We
bring
did not spend
that
$1 million
up on
this
September
year
3rd.
yet, but that's somewhere in the 700,000
But that's all the design, with all the sub-consultants.
that we've been billed for, yes. And we've paid a lot of additional subcontractors as well for that.
Madam Chair, one other thing.
Yes.
I just want to get closer to the hotel concept. I heard Bob say he didn't think it was a good idea to put a hotel there, but what's wrong with just going out and giving it to an RFP and let them market it? Why are we deciding that when let the market determine whether that's viable or not? Let the proposal, just like the city came back with RFIs on the golf course, why can't we get an RFI on the hotel site? It's already zoned as a hotel site, and the opportunity for retail and other things is a dynamic factor of it, I think is important.
I'll
So-
support your motion, Greg.
Okay, I make a motion to put an RFP or RFI out for the hotel site at Boca Chico.
Which, an RFP or an RFI?
Let's do RFI. That's what the city did. I don't know if there's a significant difference. We're looking for information, not necessarily specifying the proposal around it.
And what are your parameters?
The parameters is that it would be a hotel site in partnership with the new golf course as designed. And it would include a restaurant facility. And the question is how much are they willing to pay for the site? Or a sharing arrangement? We're open to proposals.
So you're talking about a three-P, public-private partnership is an option.
Anything is an option. I'm looking for options to say, what would you do? And if they come in with a proposal that says, you want to put a 200-unit hotel there, and we're willing to share on a revenue basis, fine. Or if they're saying they're looking to pay us a dollar amount for that, and give us some kind of operating contract, for having facilitating the food and beverage, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd rather just have an outright sale rather than trying to partner in the profits, which are pretty thin.
So preference is to an outright sale. We can put that in there as a preference and see what we get and let it ride for 6 months to a year.
Just being the devil's advocate, what if it fails? I mean, what if the hotel fails?
So what if the hotel, with you don't have to do it, so they have to come in with the proposals. to
No,
say-
if they build the hotel and it just is a big success and they decide that they're just going to abandon it, or how is that handled, Jacob? Do we have a right to take it back take the land back, or how is that?
I guess the answer is it would depend. I mean, there were a lot of options that Commissioner Ernst laid on the table. So it would really depend on what kind of relationship was structured, and what kind of, in the event of a sale, if there was some reverter rights. I mean, again, there are a number of different ways that it could be organized and structured, but it would depend on who either the buyer or the partner was in that discussion. And we'd be happy to have that conversation once you have a better idea of what both parties are interested in.
Steve?
Yeah, I think there are pitfalls to partnering and to outright sale. Outright sale, if the hotel fails, then what's to stop the property owner from selling that property off as residential, or to build a mall, or whatever they want, going to, and I'm not casting aspersions, but a Jim Batmazian walking in, buying the property and putting up whatever he pleases to put up. As far as in partnership, if the property fails, then we're also sharing in the losses. Can we afford the losses? I'm not saying don't do either one. I just want to be clear on what some of the pitfalls are in embarking on this project. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't support a motion. I will support a motion for an RFI. But we need to look at this as objectively as possible and prepare for as many scenarios as we can.
Aaron?
I don't see any harm in going out for the RFI to see what we get back. How long would we put it out there for?
Let's identify the broker. So my requirement would be, it has to be someone with an established hotel expertise broker. So we have to find that broker. So that's our first step, or is it, how do we do that, Ryan?
Well, I'd have to ask Jacob, but wouldn't we need to do proposals because they stand to make?
Again, I think the question is, it would depend what you're looking for. I mean, if you're looking for a broker, for someone to go out and broker the property and find a hotel to bring in, that would be one option, and that, as Brand indicated, may very well be an RFP. And that broker would be essentially commission-based, depending on what, not necessarily by the district, but by what hotel ultimately brought to the table. If it was a partner or a hotel you were looking for, or a private developer you were looking for, they may be able to submit different proposals. As you indicated initially, you have a menu of different options that you might be looking for. They may be able to submit different scenarios, and you can select from any one or none of them. But if you're looking for an individual or a firm to broker that land, that would be one approach, as opposed to an RFI, which would be fairly more amorphous, and you could come back with any number of different types of responses, depending on how a particular investor, developer, or hotel would envision using that property.
Okay, so we have two options. I'll tell you what, could I have the opportunity to look at it, withdraw my motion, to have the opportunity to explore which option would be the best and give you, this group, more options at the next meeting?
Sure.
I was just gonna ask, if we did the RFI and we got back, let's say 30 different options from people, at that point, could we say this is allowed, we need to hire a broker now to really market this property, or?
That's an option as well.
I'd like to do the investigative part of it, and then come back with, and give you those two options.
When should we put that on the agenda?
When's our next meeting?
A week from tomorrow.
Let's go September 3rd.
No pressure.
No.
Okay, Joanne, the motion has been withdrawn. Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Okay. Okay, moving right along.
I'm just getting back to the budget discussion. As far as the city budget goes, are there any other questions or anything out there that we need to get answered, or are we looking at the city budget to adopt it minus those 4 things that we talked about tonight? Just for the sake of putting these numbers into our budget.
Well, commissioners, have you all had a chance to meet with Jill and Michael to discuss any questions that you had, any concerns? Erin, did you have a chance?
I met with Brianne and I talked to Michael a little bit.
Okay, Steve, how about you?
I've spoken to Brianne just a little bit. I have not had the opportunity to meet with Michael.
Do you want to? He's gonna be going away before we.
Yeah, I think he's already gone. I think what we need is contained in this book, and any questions I have, I think I can address with Brianne.
Okay, Craig, are you good with,
Good, I talked to him.
okay, Bob?
Yeah, I'm good. I met with Michael and Michelle and Brianne and feel comfortable with the city's budget.
Me too.
Okay.
Thank you for considering that then. So are there any other budget items that you want to discuss tonight? Yes, Bob?
And not necessarily a budget item, but it would fall within an expense that we'd need to consider. As I've been approached by several members of the community regarding the hours of the swimming pool here. And we close the pool at 5 o'clock, which means that those people who work during the day can't get here in time to do a lap around the pool in the evening. Now, I don't know if it's possible to extend the hours of the pool. Whether lighting is an issue, I know personnel would certainly be an issue, but I'd like to explore if we could do that, especially during the summer hours when it stays daylight and maybe until daylight savings time changes.
I'll talk with Paul and look at that.
Okay.
Well, the tennis courts are open, so.
No, it doesn't require supervision, with the
That's true.
people playing tennis, whereas, this is a potentially life-threatening hazard if it's not supervised properly and with depending on who's swimming in there. But I think it's a good idea. Same thing with Gumbo Limbo. I'd like to see those hours extended because I think they closed the facility before it, I think.
Yes.
But aren't they, the boardwalks are open?
Yes, the property, including our trails and boardwalks, are open until sunset every
Right.
day.
But, you still have a nice facility there where the public, I talked to chatted with Michelle a little bit about that. I don't know how the director feels. How do you feel, Lily, with that idea?
Honestly, thanks for asking. There's a lot of interest in the community. We can't do it with our current staffing levels.
Okay,
So
well,
it is a budget question.
maybe we could take care of that, and that's what I'm
That'd
thinking.
be awesome.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just again. Anyone else have anything you want to bring up? Jacob, have you had a chance to discuss the CRA with legal on the city side?
I'm not, we made a call, we're just not connected yet, but we hope to have that conversation very soon. It'd be great if we can have it before the 3rd. My suspicion is it'll be somewhat of an ongoing dialogue. I anticipate it'll take more than one conversation to resolve that issue, but we do look forward to having that conversation.
Okay.
I have one more question about our budget. As we look at the budget and dollar amounts left, I think Merv had mentioned setting aside a line for a golf course construction. We don't have to decide tonight, but we need to start thinking about how much of that total number are we gonna devote, are we gonna put any amount aside for the Gumbo Limbo project, for a second field house, or any other large items, or are we gonna allocate all of that for the golf course construction? We wanna start getting a line set up in our budget for golf course construction or any other major projects.
Well, I think some of this forward discussion too has is going to impact that,
Okay, so we'll talk about that at the September 3rd.
yes.
Okay.
Put that on the list.
Okay.
please.
It's there.
It's there. Commissioners, does anybody need a 5-minute break before we continue on to invoices?
We don't have the invoices.
Oh,
So we can go
well,
quick.
we have payroll.
I can make the motion for payroll now.
Okay, let's do that.
Commissioners, I'd like to make a motion for payroll, this upcoming payroll. Well, we normally include it with the invoices, but it was a little out of cycle, so I asked Joanne, and she was quick, so I make a motion for a payroll of $11,586.07 payable for this Friday.
It is not in
It's
your
not in your
packets.
budget.
Second.
Oh,
It's usually just one number, and that's the number.
What was the number again, 11,000?
$11,586.07.
Where's the 7 cents?
Is there any discussion?
I second.
All in favor of approving the payroll, say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. Thank you. Okay, interim executive director report.
Commissioners, in front of you, everybody got a binder. This is the copies of the responses that the city got to the RFI. They're all listed in there. They've included the letter that we sent over to them last week as well. There's a special meeting tomorrow before the city council meeting to discuss the golf course. Kimberly Warren is going to make a presentation about the golf course feasibility, which I believe is an analysis of our proposal. I've asked for a copy of their presentation, but haven't received that yet. And I plan on attending the meeting just to hear what's said and what they plan on talking about. Melissa mentioned that there was a roof leak that was addressed, but it is a 21-year-old roof, so she's gonna have that looked at, and it's something to consider for next year. The patch reef AC issue is it's gonna be approximately $51,000. She's still getting a few questions answered before we sign off on that repair. And then lastly, we've talked about this ribbon cutting at Patch Reef, and the rain has not stopped, and now we have a tropical storm out there threatening to dump more rain on us. So I don't know how that will back us up, but it's starting to get into the point where we are going to conflict with scheduling for football and lacrosse and sports that start up. So if everybody's okay with it, I'd like to just consider maybe sending out a press release and tabling the ribbon cutting so that we don't impact the games and these sports groups.
Everybody,
Yeah, I'm fine with this.
Okay. That's everything.
okay.
I have just a quick question, on this.
We're
Yeah,
going
That's
to
gonna
have,
be golf course.
yeah, we're gonna go to the golf course update. Wayne, would you like to?
Can I ask a quick question first, Brianne?
Yes.
Do you think there's any possibility of you reading into the record the letter that was sent to the city regarding the golf course design and comments?
I could go to public comments, and if there's a public comment on the agenda tomorrow, I could do that then.
Because the public won't hear that, won't see that unless we bring it to their attention. And if there's a possibility of doing that under public request, maybe that would be the thing to do. Because I think that has some documents in there that I assume the council all have read that, but I think it's important that we get that out to the public as well.
Okay.
We think we just make sure that I can do that because I'm going to go with you. So
Okay.
I'll be happy to since my name is on the letter.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And if it has to be a public request, then we'll do it then.
Okay.
Okay. Wayne, sorry. Commissioners, you all have a budget comparison that Mr. Branthwaite has toiled out all night. He was up at 1:30 in the morning doing this, so.
This document?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Do you want to do public comments?
Okay, so I got the document yesterday, I think the same document that you all got and went through those. obviously, most of it is just marketing blurb. Everybody's going to design a great golf course that will be playable and fantastic, et cetera, et cetera. So what I did is I broke it down. There were 16 respondents. Six of those 16 responded in a way that didn't meet the criteria, in that they didn't provide any detailed information or cost information. 4 of the 6 said, we can build it for $8 million, not a problem, and this is why you should select us. One of them said that he wanted $8 million on the table, and then he was happy to work with the city to help them do the golf course. And then the related group provided a development proposal, which was completely different from what the RFI requested. So the balance of the people that responded, I think there are 3 that, no, sorry, I think there's just, there's 2 or 3 that responded during your first RFP that you put out. What I did is I broke it down into a total budget submitted, so that was the main number that all of the respondents submitted. So what I then did is I broke out the fees and the contingencies, because some people had fees in there and some didn't. So I pulled those out of it. The next thing I pulled out was vertical construction costs, because that would help us get to an understanding to be able to somewhat compare golf course to golf course costs. So I pulled out the vertical construction, and then in order to compare somewhat accurately golf course to golf course costs, there were items that were in there in everybody's budget. Some people had tree removal and some people didn't. And some people, so there was a variety of things that were either included or not included. So to create the apples to apples comparison, I pulled out some of those items that would be unfair to either leave in or to leave in or take out. So that gave us a revised budget for comparison, and those are the basic numbers, and they range from 9.6 million down to 4 million for just the construction of the golf course. In doing that, what we did is we took our proposal for our design costs and we took out those same things so that we could be compared apples to apples. And so you'll see that our construction costs are down at 5.8 million. I think the one thing that this shows is that we're not out there. We're not on another planet. We're not doing, what did the city say, a Cadillac golf course or a Champagne golf course. We're certainly right there in the mix. The one thing that we don't know in some of those costs is what has been, they've included some numbers, but not all numbers. So it's very difficult to discern. We can compare apples to apples, but some may be big apples and some may be small apples. So the way that the city put out the RFI was very, it was not defined as to exactly what should be answered. People just, it's kind of like asking, what is a house going to cost? Or can you build my house for this amount of money? And so it's difficult to understand how many rooms you'll get or what the quality of those fixtures and furnishings will be. I think on that. So I think, the average for the variance to what we had proposed, the average variance is about $500,000. Some are higher, some are lower, obviously. And really, the only way you can really understand this is really to get in front of somebody And the first thing they're gonna say to you is, well, we don't have all the information. We don't know, is the city gonna make us remove all of the exotic trees? And what those costs are. So there's so much, so what's gonna happen ultimately is that all of that lack of understanding is gonna drive their costs up. As they begin to sit down and research the project, understand what is required, get engineering involved, those costs are gonna steadily be driven up. Pretty much, I think, to where we are today. Clearly, some of the, you know, we looked at the Sanford Golf design, who was at $4 million for the golf course. Sorry, so just to, I did a total budget by cost just to see. Now, Ryan Golf Construction is a big construction company in Florida. They've done a lot of golf courses, they've done all kinds of projects, and they had a total project cost that actually exceeded the $8 million that the city requested. And they were highest at about $12.5 million. I think that's quite pertinent because they've been around the block. They understand what costs are, and they actually haven't taken the low road of saying, yes, we can design, we can do it for $8 million. And you know what, when we get in front of you, we'll show you what needs to be done, and we'll get our costs once we've been selected. We'll get our costs back up once we've been selected. So at least they've been open and they've gone beyond that 12 million, even though that may cost them the project, beyond the 8 million. So some people did not respond with vertical construction costs. There's only a few of them that ultimately did provide, and there was Ryan Golf, Dinnick Golf in Minnesota, Swanson Golf, and then Westcapes, Duesenbury, and Sanford Golf. Those were the only people that included a vertical construction component. And then this is just a summary of the golf budgets by cost and who was the highest and who was the lowest. In looking at the lowest and comparing that to our costs, what we did is we looked at the quantities of the main elements of what our quantities were and what Sanford was, and we can see in general there's a lower quantity that they have specified, and in addition there is a lower cost that is stated, and you know obviously I think their goal, like I think they came in at $8.0 million. So there's that summary. I don't know that it means anything. I don't know that anything means anything that has come out of the RFI, because there's just not enough information, there's not enough detailed information, and they haven't had time to really get to anything. And I think most respondents will say, well, let's put in 8 million. Let's get in the game, and we'll figure it out as we go along. So it'll be interesting to see what approach the city takes from here on. Other than the fact that they can turn around and say, well, we can do it for 8 million. We've got people who've said that they can do it for 8 million. And go from
But
there.
as you've said, will they guarantee the 8 million?
Nobody will guarantee anything.
So, I mean, your numbers there are compliant to the RFI. It is only the west side.
Correct.
And is irrigation just for the west side? It doesn't include the additional irrigation that would be required for the whole complex?
Correct. So we've taken, we had broken out our west side originally. So we took all of those numbers and used all of those breakouts to make the comparison and to create that number of where we are.
So, for example, the irrigation system that you have there is a west side only irrigation, but they have the whole golf course irrigation system. It's a number higher than 1.6 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Just so that people could see somewhere, because I think the city has said you guys are out there, we don't know what this is gonna cost. And so let's go and get this RFI. I think the problem with the RFI, as I see it, is that, you know, you guys are talking about two different projects here.
Right.
It's not, no longer about, you know, whether an irrigation system is too expensive, that you're specifying, or it's too cheap, or whatever the case may be. It's really about what the district wants to do with a much bigger scope of project versus what the city has told us they're looking to do with just developing the west side. So that's, you know, there's a vision that is separated by two parties.
Wayne, I did go through more than 3 or 4 of these RFIs, but I did notice that the maintenance building costs were less. Was that because they're just doing a smaller project? And the maintenance costs that we put in there, did the city have input onto the size and scope of that? Was that part of the reason our maintenance building was 2 point whatever million?
Well, our maintenance building is designed to accommodate equipment and staff for the entire 3 properties. So it's been, you know, the requirements for just the 18 holes is less. And then I think they've also, you know, to get to 8 million, you got to take stuff out. So you make things smaller and you leave, you know, equipment outside, or you build lean-tos, that kind of thing to get there.
Yeah, I think Tommy's, yours comment, you know, about, you know, what do you want to take out? And we'll get down to where you want to be, but you're
Correct.
not going to have the course that you really have designed.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you look at Sanford, you know, in terms of earth moving, they're moving 150,000 cubic yards, we're moving, you know, 280,000. So you like you say, you just keep taking stuff out. It's, you know, it's a spreadsheet, so it's very easy to take things out.
Well, explain to them about the design that Sanford has put in there as far as the safety goes.
Yeah, I was quite surprised, you know, just in obviously, I chose him because he was the lowest price in there, but in looking at it, he's got the 19 holes that's routed backwards to ours, which puts all the housing and the I-95 on the right-hand side, which is, it's predominantly where golfers hit the ball is on the right side. It's a slice shot, so you've probably got 90% of people whose bad shot is to the right. And anyway, it was just interesting to note that he rerouted the course that way.
Thank you. Craig, did you have something?
I think you did a pretty good job, and I'm glad to see that you fell into the middle of the whole pack. And on short notice, you assembled a very comprehensive spreadsheet, and I hope that the city staff go through it all and see this as well and come to the same conclusion.
Thanks.
Steve?
Yeah, did any of the respondents make any allowances for maintenance costs on the courses they proposed?
No equipment, nothing like that. It was just a basic.
So we don't even know what kind of grass they proposed using?
I believe that they will all, some specified it, but it'll all be Bermuda. It'll all be the lower cost Bermuda.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Sure.
Wayne, did any of them mention a tunnel or traffic?
No,
No, okay.
everything was restricted to the west side. Clubhouse, everything.
What's frustrating is I went through every single one of these and made notes on each one, and, you know, we've been through this process before, so it wasn't as daunting. But I can't imagine the 5 council people having the opportunity to go through these and understand all these, the terminology and the impact that all these different aspects of these proposals or these RFIs will have on the project. I just, it's gonna take a lot of time for them.
Sure.
Erin, you didn't get a chance to ask Wayne anything? Are you good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Jacob?
I have nothing other than just to suggest, I know it's long overdue, but Sam and I will both be here on the 3rd for our long-awaited Sunshine Law presentation. So thank you all for your patience and continued coordination, and we are looking very forward to that. But that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Erin, any reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the lightning tracking system for the pool, to make sure, I don't know who does that, would you do that,
Well, no.
Melissa?
Well, Melissa's gonna look into it tomorrow with the people that run this building, but we'll talk to Paul too about making sure the lifeguards just clear the pool for now until we have it all addressed.
Okay, yeah, and the guy that I spoke to was Shane, and he's like, yeah, we definitely need to expand from the 8 minutes, because there's been a few close calls
We'll
with
get it all
lightning,
checked, 'cause it's
and
usually
people actually in the pool,
Okay.
so.
Thank you, Erin. I'm glad you're safe. Steve?
I'm good.
Greg?
I'm good.
Bob?
Well, I have a few things.
Jump in there.
Well, it just occurred to me that if the Boca National project is drawn out any much longer, is that we have 3 corners of this project that are really eyesores. We have the construction fences around them, and if we don't come to a conclusion on what we're doing with the golf course soon, where we can start something and show some activity, I think what we ought to do is take those fences down, plant some sod, and make it look presentable for the neighbors, if nothing else, and put up a sign saying, future home of Boca National, rather than having, I mean, I don't know what that would cost, but I think it would,
It's wrong.
it's wrong to have that sitting out there like that. And then secondly, I want to bring up a subject that we have talked about so many times, and we've gotten caught up in so many other issues that we haven't addressed this, is that Brianne's been interim director now for 8 months. I think she's done a remarkable job, and I'd like to put, discussion on this position on one of our future agenda items.
Okay, as what?
As a discussion of what we're going to do with the interim executive director's position. I think it's time that we made a decision to either do an RFP or just summarily decide that we're satisfied with the work that Brianne's doing and award her that permanent title.
Is it time I can still make a motion? Or no, I can't do that now, right?
If it's related to this specific topic, I would suggest having something agendized for the next agenda, when it was actually noticed to the public.
So can we put it on the agenda for the 3rd?
I would request that.
Question for council. Are we obligated to do an RFP, to do a search for the position? Or if it's the determination of the board that everybody's satisfied with Brianne's work, that we can just appoint her permanently?
That decision is squarely within the purview of the board. There's not a requirement that you post a solicitation or go out to bid for that position.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm done.
Oh,
That's it.
okay.
You sure?
Sure. Has everyone had a chance to look at the needs assessment? And do you have any questions for Brianne to bring before the city when she has her conference call tomorrow at 11? Because if you do, I'd like for you to present those to her and be heard.
Madam Chair, she'll have mine by 9 o'clock in the morning.
And everybody's giving some feedback.
Okay, you all good with that? Okay.
I did like the question, someone asked a question specifically about Gumbo Limbo, and I thought that was important. And something similar on the golf course might be worthwhile, I don't know. But
Okay. You want to email her and?
I'll
Okay,
email her.
okay,
We talk.
Yeah.
okay.
Can I make one more comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to suggest that everybody that's, the server, I was talking to others in similar roles as ours, is that their emails are set up to where they cannot see each other's emails. And in some ways, I think that's good, and maybe should be thinking about that, but if you're gonna post something that may require or cause somebody to want to make a response to that, then save it to the public meeting and don't send it. That way you don't get into problem of sending an email that somebody flippantly responds back to, and now we've got a violation of the Sunshine Law. So just be careful. And I'm sure Jake will cover that.
Jacob and Sam will cover that. We've already discussed that. Very important. Our future agenda items are the Sunshine Law. Brianne, do you have any information on the pension that we brought up?
We do. We actually, Florida League offers a pension program, and they actually won a competitive process through Dade City, so Jacob is working on writing that up so that we can review it and hopefully move forward on that. But basically, it will be at your discretion what you want to fund or contribute at a matching rate, and there's some different options, but I think we'll be able to move forward with the Florida League.
Okay.
Jake, when you're looking at that, a question I would have is what the mandatory enrollment in that process would be. For instance, if we end up managing the golf course and we take on 20 additional employees, then are we obligated to incorporate them into our pension deferred comp or whatever plan we elect to do, or can we have it specific to the executive offices of staff?
You know, we'll look at that. The issue is going to be, as Brianne indicated, the Dade City went out to bid for this service some number of months, if not a year or two ago, and the contract was awarded to the Florida League of Cities. Their procurement process is consistent with ours and compliant with our charter. So under Florida law, we can essentially piggyback onto their process. There's good and bad to that. The good is it saves the district some administrative time and effort to go through a process on its own. The downside, to the extent that it is one, is we're bound by the terms and conditions of that procurement. So whatever the Dade City contract would provide for as it relates to eligibility, if we wanted to piggyback on that contract, those would be the same terms and conditions that would be embraced in our agreement. But we will look specifically at the eligibility options under those terms.
Are there other options besides the Dade County agreement?
And again, we could theoretically go out to bid on our own for some pension, opportunities. There may be others out there. This is just one that Brianne and her team were able to locate, and their procurement process was consistent with our own. So we're happy to look at that a little closer as it relates to eligibility, see if that's something that works for the board, and if it doesn't, we can then look at another direction if needed.
Yeah, I think the size of our offering would probably be better combined with somebody else, or
Sure.
going with FMIT and with one of their other programs rather than trying to go back for an RFP.
I had a request from the public to reopen public request. Do I need a motion for that?
You've already recurred.
Okay. Rick, would you like to?
I would.
Thank you.
Rick Hurd, 285 Northeast Spanish Court. Thank you very much. It's difficult sometimes sitting there and a lot of issues come up and I think, oh, I could maybe answer a question or shed light on something. So I think I have a few, they may seem like random comments, but some of the things that you discussed over the evening, I may be able to shed some light on a few things. So one of them is, it's kind of a topic that has come up here and elsewhere, is Osprey Point. Osprey Point, and I don't have my numbers directly in front of me, this is by memory, but Osprey Point was constructed, and it was actually a nightmare construction. I don't know if you're aware, but it took about 7 or 8 years longer than it should have taken because of environmental concerns. But when it opened in 2010, it had, its costs were approximately $15 million to build the golf course. So I just want to put some things in perspective for you. So around $15 million, what did you get for $15 million? You got a cart barn, you got a maintenance building, you got a building that they called a pro shop, but it was not really a pro shop. It was just a very small building that had some restrooms and an office. And a really nice golf course is what you got. So most of those costs were probably golf course costs. They have just completed, and it will open, I believe, next week, a cafe. In lieu of a clubhouse, they built a very nice looking cafe, very modern building, and they upgraded the former quote pro shop into a legitimate pro shop. That cost $4 million. So if you take the development costs of Osprey and you bring those costs up to 2019 using CPI, that would be about $17 million to build what they had, plus about $4 million to build the cafe / pro shop. So you have a $21 million golf course. So when you think of Boca National being, you know, whatever it is, anywhere from 20 to the original number 28, which by the way includes a lot more than what was in the numbers for Osprey, things aren't that out of line. That $21 million does not include the county committed to build a learning center, which has not been built, but they did put a trailer in, and that cost $400,000. And the reason for that's exorbitant for a trailer, but they did put some of the infrastructure in that would be needed in the event that they do someday build a building so that we can get out of the lightning with all our kids and everything. So anyway, when you talk about Osprey, it does make in excess of $500,000 a year profit. But it did cost $21 million, and that includes 0 land costs. And a proper number, in my opinion, on the land value out there is probably at least $100 million worth of land on that acreage, if it were to be developed. So that's one thought. I think you kind of went through that before and passed. Another comment on Red Reef Park. Red Reef Park is actually a beautiful executive golf course. It does use the paspalum grass that Price Fazio had proposed to use for Boca National. It's very nice property, and you know that you pay anywhere from $200,000 to $250,000 a year to subsidize that property. My opinion, I love Red Reef Park. I think it's a great place. I think whenever you look at something losing money, you have to look at whether its costs of operation are too high or the revenues are too low. And people have a lot of stories about, well, like someone said, maybe Steve, you could fire a cannon across it and not hit anyone. However, they do approximately 25,000 rounds of golf a year there, which is a lot of golf. So then you have to ask, well, they just don't charge enough, or are the costs too high? I did my own analysis of that, and I guess in my determination, the costs are quite high. I think they have $400,000 a year in staff costs there, which ends up being 75% to 80% of the revenue is consumed just by staff costs. So you don't have a bad golf course there. You don't have a bad property. You have a beautiful property with impeccable placement by the ocean, grassed in the top quality grass that you can get, same grass that's at Osprey Point, and you just have expensive operational costs for whatever reason. Boca Municipal is kind of the same story. They do 55,000 rounds of golf a year, which is pretty good for a municipal facility. They lose anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 a year. Again, 75 to 80% of their revenues are consumed by staff costs. So that's another thought. The next thought is, as we go down this potential road of the city taking over operation and development of the west side, leaving the district with the east side, the possibility exists, I think, to get joint agreement and buy-in into a single vision. And hopefully that vision would be the vision that Price Fazio put forth. It's an excellent vision. And under that, cooperatively, I think it would be possible the city could develop the west side, pay for it and develop it, leaving out things like the driving range and the maintenance facility, which belong over on the east side, and the district could do the east property. So I just want to throw that out there. I think, to me, I wouldn't think that was a problem. I think that would be a potential way for the district to partner with the city to do it that way. And even in the event that the city went completely different direction, I think that, to me, the opportunity that exists for you on the east property is so incredible to build, and I keep saying golf park. I have a vision of something that's like nothing I've really ever seen, but is possible on that property, that could coexist, and even if the west side had its own driving range and clubhouse, I think you could, on the east side, you could have an amazing top golf type practice facility with a short course, and put in a nice restaurant or pro shop clubhouse type facility and make that the destination. And related to that is the hotel idea that comes up. Long ago, I had made a proposal to work with it was Lennar at the time, the owners or potential owners of property, because there is a need, I think, there's some support anyway, for a lodge or a / boutique hotel that could serve the golf course and or an academy. As our academy expands, for example, we have a need for housing for students from Asia, from Europe, from South America. We have a lot of Brazilians who come. And so there's, I don't know how it all works out and whether the finances are really there to support a full-fledged hotel, but the possibility exists to kind of build sort of a community or something there that might be greater than what we're thinking now. And those were all my thoughts.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Rick?
No, I was just gonna say on the Red Reef, when I met with Michael, he did say that the new numbers they got for Red Reef was the rounds were up by 15%.
Yeah.
So, it's not, maybe the city could look to get like some kind of consultant to come in and look at how they're running the golf course and maybe make it more,
Programming.
It's,
something. Well,
I
the
think
issue with
from a-
programming though, especially with kids, is there's no place to put them during a lightning storm. But then again, they have beach camps where the kids have to hide under wooden pavilions amongst trees when there's lightning storms. Yeah,
That's right.
so,
yeah,
I don't
pick the
know.
wrong tree, as we saw last weekend. With Red Reef, if it were a business, a private business, things would be a lot different there. But it's not, and it doesn't need to be, because the district steps in and forks over whatever you need to every year to make up the deficit. So there's no pressure on it to change how it operates, there's no pressure for it to perform financially, and that's how it is.
I knew I forgot something. Yeah,
Yeah, you brought that up last week.
Yes, I did. Rick, I've had the same experience that Steve's had, going over there on the weekends when there's absence play. You saw one golfer. But I do know that they also have a cadre of volunteers that help out over there as well. And so I don't know why their staffing costs would be so high on such a small project. And we don't get any information on that in terms of staffing or otherwise, as to understand how those costs are. But I'm suspecting the benefits probably pay into that a little bit too, because that can be a big number if you've had people there that have been there for quite some time. But thanks for reminding me. I'll bring that up September 3rd.
We're having a busy day, September 3rd.
Yeah.
Steve, did you want to say that?
Yeah, if the problem is expense in personnel, that leads me to believe what Bob said, that working for the city entails, or city employment agreements entail a pretty heavy benefits package. And really, you can't say to employees of Red Reef, well, you can't have the same benefits as municipal services. Just, but it goes back to the concept of, well, what's affordable to the average family And I don't know that a golf course like Red Reef, it is a nice course. I agree with you, it's a very nice course. But if we're gonna have staffing that requires a high level of compensation, and we're gonna have a very, very affordable fees, you know, you can have one, you can't have the other. So maybe it needs to be run like a business, and maybe we need to, you know, have one of those moments where we look at the reality that, well, we can't afford to subsidize it forever. Maybe the city needs to look at it and say, well, we need to do something about the fees. Because if there are 25,000 rounds of golf in a small facility like that, there should be no reason why you can't at least break even.
They can't raise the fees substantially. There's a restriction. Would you like to explain that, Paul?
I don't know the whole rule behind it, I'm still getting abreast to that, but you can only go up so much on that golf course. Each increment, each year, but I'm not entirely sure what that is.
So is this a limit placed by city ordinance, or?
It has to be.
Greg, would you know?
We'll get it confirmed. I believe the golf fees are tied to the CPI, much like our cemetery fees are. We said that there was only a certain amount, percentage that they could go up each year. We'll get that confirmed for you.
Thank you.
Rick, 25,000 rounds of golf on that small course sounds like a lot of activity. What kind of rounds could that short course sustain? I mean, could you?
Could the Boca National short course?
No, I'm sorry, Red Reef, we're talking about Red Reef. Do you think that, I mean, how many rounds could you possibly max out there? And, I mean, are there any marketing plans? I don't know anything about Red Reef, we don't hear too much about it at all. I mean,
Other than living near it and driving by it 4 or 5 times a day, I don't know either. And you know, in season, it's quite busy. And it's actually agonizing to play because it attracts a non-golfer, you know, the flip-flops and t-shirt kind of crowd, which is, it's great. I'm not saying anything against that, but as a golfer, a real golfer would look at it and say, you know, I'd rather not go there because it takes so long time to play that golf course. But it is quite busy in season.
And the summertime's a great place for the locals to get out on the course there. You know, if you had some kind of a program to market it. I mean, why, if you lived east of 95, you're gonna drive out to Osprey to, you know, play golf as a junior, you know, or take a lesson or whatever.
And the lack of a practice facility really hurts.
Yeah.
at Red Reef.
Yeah, it does. Maybe that could be something that we coordinated with, you know, our Boca National too, bring that into the mix so we could use that for tournament play. Yeah, whatever. Rick, thank you for your input as always.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Steve,
Move to adjourn.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
It's not 8 o'clock yet.
All right.